It was March 2025, and I was back in Georgia for the first time in years. Decatur, to be exact. I grew up there, then moved out west, tried the whole big city thing. But my mom had called me crying about a neighbor, someone I used to know when I was a kid. Henry France Jr. said he died in a scuba diving accident down in Florida. It shook her up bad, and I don't know, something in her voice made me feel like I needed to come home for a bit. Now, Henry France Jr., he wasn't just any neighbor. This guy was like a local legend, always doing something outdoorsy. Scuba diving, hiking, teaching survival skills to kids, that kind of thing. He lived 2 houses down from us, and I remember his son, Henry Doyle. Kid was sweet, quiet, used to draw on the sidewalk with chalk and leave little notes on everyone's porches. Always had this weird little whistle he'd do when he was thinking. Anyway, Henry Doyle went missing back in 2021. Whole town flipped upside down trying to find him. Cops, search dogs, helicopters, nothing. Just vanished. His dad said he went out to play and never came back. After a while, people just stopped talking about it, like the silence was safer. But after Henry Jr. died in that scuba accident, the family came back to clean out his house. His wife had left years ago, and he'd mostly lived alone since the boy disappeared. My mom and I walked over one morning to offer our condolences and maybe help out. You know, small town manners. That's when everything started. I hadn't been in their backyard since I was a teenager. It looked the same, but also not. Overgrown, unkempt, like nature was trying to take it back. And then I saw the treehouse, way in the back corner, almost hidden behind a wall of vines. I swear to you, I had forgotten it even existed. But seeing it again hit me in the chest like a cold fist. We used to play in that treehouse. Me, Henry Doyle, and a couple other kids. It was simple. Wooden ladder, one window, plywood floor. I hadn't thought about it in a decade. But as I stared at it, I remembered something weird. That treehouse? It had been locked up since before Henry went missing. Like nailed shut. I remember that. No one was allowed in there for years. Not after one of the support beams cracked when we were about 12. Henry Jr. said it was unsafe and boarded it up. So when one of the cousins started yelling from the backyard, I already had a sinking feeling. They were trying to get into the treehouse. Something smelled awful, and flies were buzzing like crazy up there. One of them pried open the door with a crowbar and just froze. Didn't move. Didn't say anything. Then he threw up. Loud. I climbed up, even though every inch of me was telling me not to. And the moment I peeked inside, I understood. There, slumped in the back corner, wearing the same little red hoodie he wore the day he disappeared, was Henry Doyle, or what was left of him. Bones, skeletal, a small, curled-up pile of human remains. For years gone, inside a treehouse that was supposed to be locked up. Couldn't move, couldn't think, just stood there, staring, until one of the others pulled me down. Cops came. Forensics. The whole deal. They ruled it accidental at first. Said maybe the kid had snuck in, got trapped, died from exposure. But none of it added up. The door had been nailed shut from the outside. And the nails were old. Rusted deep. You don't trap yourself in like that. Worse, there were scratches inside the walls. Like tiny fingers clawing at the wood. One part near the window had his name carved into it over and over. Henry Doyle, France. Henry Doyle, France. Henry Doyle, France. Again and again, like he was trying to remind someone. Or maybe himself. Now here's where it gets darker. A week later, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about him. About how close he'd been all those years. About how his dad had lived there. Slept there. Grilled burgers in the yard with his dead son 20 feet above his head. And I couldn't shake this one memory. Back in 2022, maybe a year after Doyle disappeared, I visited my mom for Christmas. We stopped by Henry Jr.'s place to drop off cookies. He wasn't home, but we left them on the porch. And while we stood there, I remember hearing a whistle, that same little tune as Henry Doyle, coming from the backyard. I didn't think about it at the time, just thought it was some bird or something. But now, I wonder. And crazy part was that the autopsy found no signs of malnutrition on the boy's remains. Meaning, even though he was hidden in that treehouse for years, somehow, He wasn't starving. There was something else too. They found small bones beside his animal bones. Birds, squirrels. Something or someone was keeping him alive. For a while, some folks whispered that Henry Jr. had known. That maybe the scuba accident wasn't an accident at all. Maybe guilt caught up with him. So back in 2020, right before the world got extra weird to me, I was down in Florida visiting my uncle's place. He owns this big patch of land near Ocala, kind of out in the sticks. It's the kind of place where the air always smells like moss and dirt, and the nights feel just a little too quiet, you know? Anyway, he had this old tree house out back, real high up in a giant oak, half covered in vines. Said it had been there since he was a kid, maybe built by his dad. Nobody really used it anymore, and you could tell it looked all rotten and forgotten. I only went up there because I was bored one afternoon. The Wi-Fi sucked, the power kept flickering, and my phone barely worked unless I stood out by the mailbox. So I thought, screw it, let me see what's up in the treehouse. Maybe I'll find an old BB gun or a stash of Playboys or something. You know, normal old kid stuff. I climb up the ladder. It creaks the whole way. Sounds like it's begging me to turn back. I push open the trapdoor, and this wave of musty air just hits me in the face. Inside, it's mostly empty. Just some spider webs, a couple broken chairs, and this mirror. Now this mirror, it was weird. Oval-shaped, framed in old black wood, like something out of my grandma's attic. And it wasn't hanging on the wall. Nah, it was bolted into the tree itself. Like the wood of the oak had grown around it a little. So I walk over and look into it. And I swear to you, my face wasn't the only one staring back. At first, I thought maybe it was some kind of old photo stuck behind the glass. But then it blinked. The face in the mirror blinked. Pale, eyes too wide, lips too thin. And it wasn't moving exactly like me. Like if I tilted my head left, it did it a second late. Laggy, like a glitch. Now listen, I ain't the type to scare easy, but something about that mirror just got under my skin. I backed up and bolted back down the ladder. I didn't tell anyone right away. Thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was the light or the dust or whatever. But that night I had dreams. Not even dreams, scenes. Like flashbacks that weren't mine. I was a little kid in the treehouse, crying while something whispered behind me. I saw flashes of kids. Different kids. Sitting in front of the mirror, all of them bleeding from the hands. All of them whispering something I couldn't quite hear. Next morning, I went back up there. Had to know if I'd really seen it. Maybe it was just a trick, you know? Sunlight and paranoia. So I went up, heart pounding. I stepped in, and there it was again. That same damn face. But this time, smiled. Now I wasn't smiling, but it was. Full teeth. Big. Like it knew something I didn't. That was it. I lost it. I grabbed a stick and started bashing the mirror. It took 3 hits before the glass finally cracked and shattered. But when it did, man, I didn't expect what happened next. The moment the glass broke, it screamed. I'm not talking about a sound from me. I mean the actual mirror let out this high-pitched, screeching wail, like nails on a chalkboard mixed with a human cry. I dropped the stick and stumbled back, but not before a big shard flew and sliced across my palm. Deep, blood everywhere. I stumbled down the ladder, half dizzy, and ran inside yelling for my uncle. He took one look at my hand and drove me to the ER, no questions asked. 14 stitches. But the weirdest part? The shard that cut me? I brought it with me. Don't ask me why. I think I was still in shock. I stuffed it in my jacket pocket. In the hospital, I pulled it out while I was waiting, just to look. And even in that little broken shard, the face was still there. Same pale skin, same white eyes, grinning at me. I freaked, dropped it on the floor and kicked it away like it was a roach. The nurse picked it up to throw it out, and I swear. She paused, stared at it for a second too long, then dropped it in the biohazard bin like her hands were shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every mirror in the house I covered. Bathroom, bedroom, even the microwave. I was paranoid, man. I kept thinking I'd wake up and see that face just hovering behind me. A couple days later, My uncle goes out back and says he wants to tear down the treehouse. Said something just didn't feel right. Maybe he saw something. Maybe he heard something. He never told me. But that evening, he doused the whole thing in gasoline and set it on fire. We watched from the porch as it burned. And I kid you not, I heard that scream again. Same one from when the mirror shattered. Long and human, coming from the fire, like it was coming out of the tree itself. After that night, things calmed down. My hand healed, though there's still a scar. My uncle cut down that oak completely a few weeks later. Hauled it off to be chipped. But get this, months later we're having Thanksgiving dinner, right? My aunt's showing off this old antique mirror she found at some estate sale. Says she got it for a steal. I look at it, and for 1 second, just 1 second, I thought I saw that face again. In the corner, in the dark spot behind me. Then it was gone. But I didn't eat the rest of my dinner. Didn't even stay the night. Sometimes I still dream about that treehouse. And every now and then, I'll wake up and swear there's a reflection watching me from inside a black screen. Not my face. Not anymore. So this happened back in 2013. I was 24, taking a break from college, and decided to do something kind of crazy. I took a solo trip to Australia. Whole plan was to just bounce around, see the coast, maybe crash at hostels or with friends of friends. Kind of just disappear for a while, you know? About halfway through my trip, I stayed at this rural property in New South Wales. Belonged to this older couple, friends of a buddy I met in Brisbane. Their place was huge, middle of nowhere. You step outside at night and it's pitch black. No cars, no people, just bugs and the wind. They had a guest room for me inside, but I was being stubborn and adventurous and asked if I could camp out. The husband goes, "Well, there's an old tree house out back. Nobody's used it in years, but if you clean it up, be my guest." That was all I needed to hear. Next morning I grabbed a broom, sleeping bag, flashlight, did the whole thing. Treehouse was decent size, up in a gum tree, few broken boards, cobwebs, you know the drill. Took about an hour to clean up enough space to sleep. And honestly, it had a kind of charm, like something out of a forgotten summer. But here's where it starts to get strange. As I was sweeping near the back wall, I noticed something carved into the wood, like someone had taken a knife or a nail and scratched words into it. Deep grooves. 3 words, "Leave or die." Now, I laughed at first, thought it was a joke. Some kid being edgy back in the 90s or something. The letters were old, worn out, covered in dirt. But then I looked closer and noticed something that made my stomach drop a bit. The carving was fresh, like the grooves were still sharp, like someone had done it maybe a day or 2 ago. No moss, no dust, just raw wood. Still, I figured it was probably some dumb prank. Maybe the old man was messing with me. Maybe one of their grandkids. I mean, I'm in a foreign country in a stranger's backyard. I wasn't gonna start freaking out over a tree carving. That night, though, I didn't sleep well. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the soft knocking sound. Not on the treehouse itself, on the tree. Like someone was tapping on the trunk from the ground. It was steady, slow. I grabbed my flashlight and looked out. Nothing, just branches swaying. Thought maybe it was a possum or some bird. Eventually fell back asleep. Next morning, I go to step outside and boom! A loose board from the roof drops and smashes me right in the shoulder. Full force. I stumbled down the ladder, bleeding and pissed off. Looked like the board had been loosened on purpose. Nails were cleanly pulled out, like someone didn't want it to hold anymore. I go tell the couple what happened, and the husband looks real serious all of a sudden. He goes quiet. Then he says, asterisk, that old treehouse hasn't been right for years. That's why we stopped letting the grandkids play in it. Strange stuff started happening. He wouldn't say much more, just told me I could sleep inside from now on if I wanted. But I didn't. I felt like it was some old treehouse incident with loose old screws and all. So yeah, I went back that night, took some tools, resecured the boards, and tried to ignore the way the tree seemed quieter than the night before. Like the wind didn't touch that part of the property. That night was worse. I woke up again around 3 a.m. this time, except now it wasn't knocking, it was whispers. Whispering, like dozens of voices, all low and fast. Couldn't make out a single word. Just this hissing, murmuring chaos around me. I sit up, flashlight in hand, spinning in circles like a lunatic. Nothing. Every time I pointed the light, the sound would shift to the other side of the room, like it was circling me. Then I saw it. On the wall, right beneath the original carving. New words had been added. Stay and rot. Fresh, sharp, still with dust below it. That was it. I jumped down the ladder, didn't even bother with the flashlight. Ran to the house, slammed the door behind me, locked it. I'm not proud of this, but I cried a little. I ain't never felt fear like that. Not before, not since. Next morning, I told the couple everything. And the husband didn't even hesitate. He grabbed a sledgehammer and a jerry can of fuel and told me, "We're tearing it down. Now." He didn't even wait for me to grab my stuff. We marched out to that treehouse. He climbed up, tore out the boards, smashed out the frame, and then soaked what was left in gasoline. Lit it, watched it burn. As the treehouse was burning, I stepped around the back to where the ladder used to be, just poking around. And there, carved into the base of the tree, not the treehouse but the actual tree trunk, was another message. Looked like it had been there for years. Faded, warped from rain and age. It said, "He always comes back." That part was never there before. I'm telling you, I'd looked at that trunk 10 times. It was clean, but suddenly now it was there, like the fire revealed it. I left the next day, didn't ask questions. Got on the next bus to Sydney and didn't look back. Sometimes, when things get quiet at night, even now, I swear I hear those whispers again. Real soft, right behind me, just for a second. But it's enough to keep me sleeping with the lights on. It was Christmas Eve, 2017, and I'll never forget it. Ever. My whole family was packed into my aunt's place down in Cleveland, Texas. You know how it is, kids running around, food everywhere, music too loud, folks yelling over each other. It was chaotic in that warm, happy kind of way. Everyone was there, cousins, uncles, grandparents, and my little nephew Cade, for years old, happiest kid I ever met. Always smiling, always dragging around this ragged blue stuffed dog he called Mr. Wolf. Wouldn't go anywhere without it. Now, my aunt's backyard was massive. She and her husband had this old barn, a shed, and this rickety homemade treehouse the older cousins built a few years back. Thing was barely holding together. It leaned a little to one side, and some of the boards were splitting from sun damage. But it was tradition, you know? Every year, the kids still played in it. We'd all played in it when we were younger. That year, though, they added a second level. Just days before Christmas, one of the uncles, Mark, the kind who always thinks he's Bob the Builder, decided it needed an upgrade. Hammered it together with scrap wood and leftover nails from the shed. No real blueprint, just vibes. I remember looking at it and thinking, man, that thing's gonna fall apart. But nobody said anything. We were too busy drinking eggnog and arguing about football. Around 5 p.m., it started to get dark. I was helping my mom bring out the second batch of tamales when I heard a loud crack. Like thunder, but sharper. Then screams. Pure panicked, I dropped the tray and ran outside. And that's when I saw it. The treehouse had collapsed. Whole top level came down like an avalanche, and underneath the splintered wood and busted beams was Cade. The sight of that little blue stuffed dog poking out of the rubble. I'll never get that out of my head. Everyone froze. For a second, no one moved. People yelling, crying, calling 911. My brother, Cade's dad, was on his knees digging through the wood with his bare hands, screaming Cade's name over and over. Paramedics came fast, took him to the hospital. I rode in the back with my brother. Cade wasn't moving. He was so small and his head, God, his head didn't look right. He made it through Christmas, but not by much. Machines kept him breathing. But there was no response, no blinking, no hand squeezing, just a heartbeat on a monitor and a family pretending that meant hope. On the 27th, they took him off life support. I watched my brother whisper something in Cade's ear, kiss his forehead, and then just collapse in the hospital chair. And that was it. The world just stopped. Now, if that was the end of the story, it would have been tragic enough. But something happened after the funeral. Something I still can't explain. See, after Cade passed, we all avoided my aunt's house. Too many memories. But a few weeks later, I had to go back to grab some tools I left in the shed. I figured I'd be in and out, quick. But when I got there, the backyard felt wrong. Not just sad, off. Like the air was heavy. Still. Too still. I walked out to where the treehouse had been. They'd cleaned up most of the wreckage, but the tree was still there. Just a big, twisted oak with broken nails sticking out from the bark. That's when I saw something that made my heart stop. There were tiny handprints on the trunk, about 4 feet high, like a kid had pressed his palms into the bark. Except they were dark, charred, almost like someone had burned them in. I stepped closer, and that's when I heard it. A soft creaking sound, wood shifting, like something up above was moving. I looked up, and for a second, I swear to you, I saw the outline of the old treehouse, like it was still there. 2 levels, the rickety ladder, the crooked window, and in that window, a figure, small, still, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. Tree bare again, just branches and winter sky. I didn't tell anyone. Figured it was grief messing with me. Maybe I wanted to see him one last time. Maybe I imagined it. That's what I told myself. Until my cousin Marissa called me a week later. She said her little daughter, just turned 5, was sleep-talking. Every night since the funeral, she'd wake up whispering the same thing over and over. The wood's too heavy. Can't get out. Tell Daddy I'm still here. Exact words. Every night. Like a recording. Now she never met Cade. Didn't even know there was a treehouse. But she kept saying it, same whispery voice, eyes closed. So I asked Marissa if she had any pictures of Cade in her house. Maybe her daughter saw one. She said no. But then she sent me a photo her kid drew in daycare. Crayon drawing. Big tree. 2 floors of a treehouse. And a little boy inside holding a stuffed blue dog. I stared at it for a long time. Then I packed a bag and left town. Haven't been back since. But every Christmas Eve, I hear a loud crack in my dreams. And sometimes, if I'm honest, I still see that second level floating in the dark, just long enough to wonder if it ever really fell, or if something else brought it down.